I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. But there I was, standing in front of two men, my heart pounding, my mind a whirlwind of confusion. The dim lighting of the hotel room cast long shadows on the walls, and I could hear the dull hum of the city outside. My hands trembled as I clutched the thin fabric of my dress, my breath uneven, my entire body screaming for me to run. But I didn't run. Because this wasn't just any situation. This was something my husband had orchestrated. Something he had pushed me into. My husband, the man I had loved, trusted, and built a life with. The same man who had looked me in the eyes on our wedding day and promised me forever. How did we end up here? I glanced at the two men, their expressions unreadable, their presence overwhelming. They didn't say a word, and neither did I. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on my chest, suffocating me. My mind screamed at me to piece everything together, to understand how I had let myself get this far. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, my husband's voice rang through the room. "You agreed to this, remember?" His words sliced through the air, cold and firm. I turned to look at him, standing just a few feet away, his arms crossed over his chest. There was something in his eyes, satisfaction, maybe even anticipation. A chill ran down my spine. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" He continued, tilting his head slightly. "You said you trusted me." That word, trust, made my stomach turn. Because trust had been the foundation of our relationship. It had been the reason I followed him blindly through every storm. And yet, standing here now, I realized I had never truly seen him for who he was. Was this his way of punishing me? Testing me? Or was it something far worse? I wanted to scream, to break free from the invisible chains that kept me rooted in place. But my voice was gone. My courage had been drained from me, little by little, through years of quiet manipulation. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself. I thought about the life we had built, the stolen kisses, the whispered I love yous in the dark, the laughter that used to echo in our home. Was it all a lie? "You're hesitating," my husband's voice cut through my thoughts again. There was no softness in it, no concern. Just expectation. And in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about us. This was about him. A sick, twisted game. A game I never agreed to play. But now, standing here, I had to make a choice. Would I go through with it? Or would I finally break free? I sucked in a breath, my pulse hammering in my ears. Whatever I chose next would change everything. I never imagined my marriage would reach this point. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you my husband, Daniel, was the love of my life. We had been together for nearly 10 years, and for the most part, it had been beautiful. We traveled together, built a home together, and dreamt of our future together. Daniel was charming, so incredibly persuasive. He had a way of making me feel like I was the most special woman in the world. He wasn't overly affectionate, but when he loved me, he did it with intensity. But looking back, I can see now that his love came with conditions. At first, the changes were small. He started questioning the way I dressed, subtly suggesting I wear things that showed off my figure. "You're my wife. You should be proud of how beautiful you are." I believed him. Then, he started introducing ideas about exploring our marriage. "A real marriage has no limits," he would say, always in a playful, philosophical way that made me feel like I was the one being closed-minded if I didn't agree. Still, I trusted him. I trusted that he would never hurt me. But trust can be the most dangerous thing in the wrong hands. One evening, while Daniel was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I never snooped. I had no reason to. But something inside me, a voice I had ignored for too long, told me to look. And that was when my world shattered. Messages. Dozens of them. Explicit. Emotional. Heart-wrenching. My hands shook as I scrolled through his conversations with another woman, no, women. Some were casual, others deeply intimate. Some were recent. Some had been going on for years. I felt sick. My chest burned with betrayal, and my mind raced for explanations. How could he do this to me? When he stepped out of the bathroom, I held up his phone, my fingers trembling. "What is this, Daniel?" He didn't look surprised. He didn't even look guilty. Instead, he sighed, rubbing a towel over his hair like I had just caught him doing something mildly inconvenient. "You weren't supposed to see that," he muttered. No apology. No panic. Just an irritated sigh. I screamed at him, demanded answers, wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting. But he remained calm, eerily so. And then he said something that turned my anger into something colder, something terrifying. "I never lied to you, sweetheart. You just never asked the right questions." Days passed. I tried to leave, but Daniel wouldn't let me. Not physically, he never got violent, but mentally, emotionally. He knew exactly how to manipulate me, using the love we once had as a leash around my neck. "We can fix this," he told me. "I don't want to lose you. But I need you to be open to new experiences." I didn't understand at first. But then he told me what he wanted. "I want you to experience pleasure with other men." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But his face was serious. Deadly serious. "You deserve this," he continued, his voice smooth, persuasive. "I know I hurt you, and I want to make it up to you. Think of it as a way to even the score." He made it sound so rational, so reasonable. As if this was about me. As if he was doing me a favor. I was disgusted. Angry. Confused. But he didn't stop. Over the next few days, he chipped away at my resistance. He brought it up casually, then intimately. He made me feel like saying no meant I was the one being ungrateful. Until finally, one night, I broke. "Fine," I whispered, my voice hollow. "I'll do it." Agreeing to something doesn't mean accepting it. I felt detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. My thoughts warred with each other. Was I doing this because I wanted to? Because I felt trapped? Because some twisted part of me thought this would make things right? Daniel acted like he had just gifted me the world. He became sweeter, more affectionate, as if my willingness had erased all his betrayals. He even kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "I knew you'd come around." I hated him. But I hated myself more. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't about me. This was about him. And yet, I went along with it. He arranged everything. The hotel, the men. He picked them, making sure they were exactly what he wanted. I wondered how long he had planned this, how many times he had fantasized about it. Every part of me screamed to run. But when the night finally arrived, I stayed. The hotel room was suffocating. The two men Daniel had chosen were strangers to me, yet they weren't the problem. He was. His presence in the corner of the room. His expectant gaze. The way he controlled everything, as if I were a piece in his game. I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers digging into my thighs. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting. I was supposed to want this, wasn't I? That's what Daniel had convinced me. But I didn't. And as the moment stretched, I realized something even more terrifying. Daniel wanted me to hate this. He wanted to break me completely. My heart pounded. A voice in my head screamed, "Run." I turned to Daniel, meeting his gaze. "I can't do this." His expression darkened, but he said nothing. I stood, my body trembling. "I won't do this." The two men exchanged glances, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. They weren't the monsters here. Daniel was. "Sit down," he said, his voice colder than I had ever heard. I shook my head. And in that moment, I made my choice. I wasn't his pawn anymore. I grabbed my coat and walked out the door, leaving Daniel behind. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I finally felt free. I ran. Through the long, silent hotel hallway. Through the dimly lit streets. through the suffocating thoughts in my head that screamed I had made a mistake. My hands trembled as I clutched my coat tighter around me, the cold night air doing nothing to calm the fire in my chest. My breath was uneven, my heart pounding in my ears. I felt sick, physically, emotionally, mentally sick. I had almost gone through with it. Almost given in. Almost let Daniel destroy the last piece of myself that I had left. But I didn't. I left. I walked out. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't free, not yet. I needed answers. I needed to know why. Why had Daniel done this? Why had he wanted this so badly? This wasn't just about an affair or some twisted idea of revenge. There was something deeper, something I hadn't fully uncovered yet. And I was done playing his game. My hands were still shaking when I pulled out my phone. Without thinking, I dialed his number. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then, finally, he picked up. "You shouldn't have left," Daniel said, his voice calm. Unbothered. I gritted my teeth. "Tell me the truth." A pause. "The truth." His tone was almost amused. "You're not ready for the truth, sweetheart. Try me." Silence. A beat. Then, finally, he sighed. "All right." And then he told me. "I never cheated on you." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I almost dropped the phone. "What?" "I never slept with anyone else," Daniel repeated, his voice slow, deliberate. "Everything you saw on my phone? Those texts? The other women? They were all fake." My stomach twisted. "You're lying." "Am I?" He chuckled softly. "Think about it. What's more painful, knowing your husband slept with another woman? Or thinking you have to even the score?" The world around me blurred. "You made it all up?" My voice was barely above a whisper. "I needed to know, sweetheart," he said. "I needed to see what you would do. If you would go through with it. If you would betray me the way I pretended to betray you." I stumbled back, pressing a hand against the cold brick wall beside me. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. You wanted me to cheat?" "No," Daniel corrected. "I wanted to see if you were capable of it." The realization hit me all at once. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about control. It was a test. From the very beginning, Daniel had been orchestrating everything, planting fake evidence, pushing me toward the edge, twisting my emotions until I was so broken, so vulnerable, that I would do the one thing he had feared the most. "Why?" I croaked. "Why would you do this to me?" "Because I needed to know if you were truly mine," he said simply. "If you would choose me, no matter what." A slow, burning rage spread through me. My entire world had been flipped upside down. He had manipulated me, gaslighted me, tortured me emotionally, all to satisfy his own twisted insecurities. And if I had gone through with it? I asked, my voice shaking. "Then I would have known the truth," he said coldly. "That you never really loved me." Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You're sick," I whispered. He laughed. "No, sweetheart. I'm just smarter than you." And with that, I ended the call. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at the phone, at the reflection of myself in the dark screen, at the woman who had been so blindly devoted to a man who had never truly loved her, only owned her. But not anymore. Not anymore. I stood there, gripping my phone so tightly that my fingers ached. The city buzzed around me, cars honking, people talking, life moving forward as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I had spent years believing in Daniel, trusting in the love we built, never questioning the little signs that, in hindsight, had been screaming at me all along. Every compliment that felt more like an expectation, every moment of kindness that came with an unspoken price. And for what? For a game? A test? The weight of it all settled on my chest like a stone. He had never cheated. He had never even wanted to share me. This was never about lust, or revenge, or some twisted fantasy. This was about power. Daniel had needed to break me, to control me so completely that I would prove my loyalty, even when it meant betraying myself. I exhaled, my breath shaking as I lifted my gaze to the street ahead. And then, for the first time in years, I made a choice. I walked away. Not just from the hotel. Not just from this night. But from him. From the version of myself that had let him mold me into someone small, someone afraid, someone weaker than I truly was. As I reached the end of the block, my phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Daniel. Come home. We'll talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. The old me would have turned around, would have tried to fix things, would have begged for answers that would only hurt me more. But the woman standing here now? She had nothing left to say. I deleted the message. I didn't block him. Not yet. Because I wanted him to wonder. I wanted him to sit in his perfectly curated world and feel, for the first time, what it was like to lose control. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted him to ask himself the question he had forced me to ask over and over again. What if? What if he had trusted me the way I trusted him? What if he hadn't needed to manipulate me to feel secure? What if I had never found out the truth? But that was his burden to carry now. Not mine. I turned off my phone, shoved it deep into my coat pocket, and kept walking. The air felt lighter, my steps more certain. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I didn't know what came next. But for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free.